Two cities on the African coast, both Spanish, both surrounded by Morocco on every side but the sea. Ceuta and Melilla, the European Union's only land borders with Africa, the last European-controlled territory on the continent. Spain has held Melilla since 1497, Ceuta since 1668. Madrid treats them exactly like it treats the capital: full Spanish territory, full EU territory, no asterisk. Morocco disagrees. Rabat calls them occupied land, compares them openly to Gibraltar. And in late July 2026, that disagreement exploded onto the beaches of Ceuta. Thousands of migrants, mostly young Moroccan men, but also families, children, unaccompanied minors, crossed into Ceuta in a matter of days. Some swam, some scaled the border fence, some used flotation devices in open water. At least 9 people drowned trying. Spain's military was deployed. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez flew in personally. Ceuta's regional government called it, quote, an absolute humanitarian and social emergency, and demanded Madrid declare a national state of emergency. Madrid refused. So why now? Why this sudden wave? Trace it back 9 days. July 8th, 2026. Spain's Supreme Court hands down a ruling that changes everything. For years, Spain could catch migrants at the border fence and send them straight back to Morocco. No processing, no paperwork, same day. It was called a hot return. The court ruled that only applies to the physical fence. The open sea is not a barrier, which means anyone who swims in, instead of climbing the fence, cannot be summarily expelled anymore. They get full legal processing. Months of it. Smuggling networks caught the loophole within hours. It spread across TikTok and Telegram. The message was simple: don't climb, swim. If this feels familiar, it should. May 2021. Roughly 8,000 migrants crossed into Ceuta in 48 hours. Moroccan border guards simply stepped back and let it happen. Why? Spain had just allowed a Polisario Front leader, the group fighting Morocco for control of Western Sahara, to receive hospital treatment on Spanish soil. Rabat considered it a provocation. Within days, the message arrived at the border: open the gate. The pattern has a name in policy circles: migration diplomacy. Morocco doesn't need tanks or warships to pressure Spain. It just loosens its grip on the border for 48 hours and lets the crisis do the talking. In 2026, Moroccan border posts were reported standing empty as the crossings happened. Only after the surge did Rabat send in reinforcements and offer Madrid a face-saving cooperation deal on returns. The tap turns off exactly when Spain needs it to. Here's what's different this time. In 2021, Spain still had Washington and Tel Aviv in its corner. In 2026, it doesn't. Since the war in Gaza began, Prime Minister Sánchez has positioned Spain as Israel's loudest critic inside the European Union. In May 2024, Spain formally recognized the State of Palestine. Israel recalled its ambassador in protest. Spain's parliament went further, passing a total arms embargo on Israel, banning weapons sales, and blocking any ship or aircraft carrying arms to Israel from using Spanish ports or airspace. Then, in March 2026, after US and Israeli strikes on Iran, Sánchez went on national television and called the strikes a, quote, flagrant illegality. Spain permanently downgraded its diplomatic relationship with Israel. Israel's foreign minister accused Madrid of standing with tyrants. Around the same time, Washington asked Spain for something simple: access to the US military bases at Rota and Morón in southern Spain to support operations against Iran. Sánchez said no. President Trump's response was immediate. Spain, he said, had been, quote, terrible. He threatened to cut off trade entirely. By the summer of 2026, Spain had managed something almost no NATO member does, alienating Washington and Jerusalem at the exact same time. That timing matters more than it looks. Ceuta and Melilla sit inside a legal gray zone most people have never heard of. NATO's Article 5, the collective defense guarantee, the an attack on one is an attack on all clause, was written to cover Europe and North America. Ceuta and Melilla are in Africa. NATO's 2022 strategic concept promises to defend, quote, every inch of Allied territory. It does not name the enclaves. The alliance has never clarified whether an attack on Ceuta would trigger Article 5, and it has had every opportunity to. That ambiguity was always there, but it only becomes a liability when Spain also loses its bilateral safety net. The informal understanding that Washington would lean on Rabat if things got out of hand. In July 2026, that safety net was gone. Spain had spent it. Step back, and it's clear why any of this is worth fighting over. Ceuta sits on the Strait of Gibraltar, 14 kilometers of water separating Europe from Africa at its narrowest point. More than 100,000 commercial vessels pass through every year. Gulf oil, Asian containers, Algerian gas, roughly 10% of all global maritime traffic. For centuries, control of the strait rested on 3 points. Gibraltar, held by Britain since 1713. The European shore, anchored by Spain's port of Algeciras, and the African shore, Tangier and Ceuta. That third point is shifting. Morocco has poured more than $7 billion into the port of Tanger Med, now the largest container port in the Mediterranean. Bigger than Algeciras, bigger than Valencia. The economic center of gravity in the strait has already moved south. Ceuta is no longer just a political flashpoint. It's the last piece of a choke point Morocco is rapidly coming to dominate, economically first, and possibly, eventually, geopolitically. None of this means Washington or Tel Aviv picked up a phone and told Rabat to open the border. There's no leak, no statement, no evidence of that. And any version of this story that claims otherwise is getting ahead of the facts. What's verifiable is simpler and arguably more damning. Spain spent 2024 through 2026 systematically burning its relationships with two of the only powers capable of pressuring Morocco on its behalf. And it did that at the exact moment its most legally exposed, most strategically valuable territory needed exactly that kind of leverage. Morocco didn't need permission to act. It just needed to know nobody was going to stop it. And after March 2026, nobody was. The consequences didn't stay contained to Spain and Morocco. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni threatened to push for Spain's suspension from the Schengen area, Europe's passport-free travel zone, accusing Madrid of failing to secure Europe's external border. Spain's foreign minister fired back, calling it partisan demagoguery. Inside Spain, the crisis has become a political weapon. The opposition People's Party and the far-right Vox Party point to Ceuta as proof that Sanchez's foreign policy left Spain exposed. Vox has called the surge an invasion. Sánchez, meanwhile, is caught between two demands he can't fully satisfy: humane treatment for migrants processed under the Supreme Court's new rules, and a Europe that wants its southern border sealed immediately. So what happens next? Watch whether Madrid and Rabat's new return agreement actually holds, or whether this becomes the third episode in a 5-year pattern. Watch whether NATO ever closes the Article 5 ambiguity around Ceuta and Melilla, because as long as it doesn't, this vulnerability doesn't go away. And watch Tanja Med's numbers next quarter, because whatever happens diplomatically, Morocco's economic claim on the Strait of Gibraltar isn't going to reverse itself. Spain still holds Ceuta, but holding it and controlling what happens around it are no longer the same thing.